that I think is more important, and that is that the left is so concerned with finding enemies that they will find enemies everywhere. And I want to expand on that and talk about who the real enemies to public discourse are, the people who are really pandering to the base in just a second. But first, I want to say thank you to our sponsors over at the U.S. Concealed Carry Association. So all the time you hear stories about some guy breaking into somebody's house and the hero homeowner shoots the guy. Good for the homeowner. Somebody breaks into your house, threatens your family, you should shoot them. But you never hear the rest of the story. The rest of the story is usually the police come, they question the person. At the very least, the guy spends the night in jail, or at least spend some time with the police. Well, you need to know what to do in order to protect yourself and also what to do when the police show up. And that's why you need the 2017 Concealed Carry and Family Defense Guide from the U.S. Concealed Carry Association. It is 100% free. In it, you will learn how to detect attackers before they see you, how to survive a mass shooting, the safest and most dangerous places to sit in a restaurant, how to responsibly own and store a gun, particularly if you have small children, as I do, and a whole lot more. It's 164 pages, chock full of useful material for you and your family. They have a bonus audio version so you can listen in your car as well. It's 100% free again, and for a limited time, you get a bonus home defense checklist as well, so you can go through it and make sure that your family is safe. Go to defendmyfamilynow.com right now for 100% free instant access. That's defendmyfamilynow.com. Again, defendmyfamilynow.com, defendmyfamilynow.com. Go over and check it out. Make sure your family is safe. So here's the point here. People on the right should never expect that folks on the true left, people who are intellectually dishonest, are going to grant them credit for speaking truth to their own side, because it's not going to happen. If you tick off the left enough, they are just going to accuse you of pandering to your own base. That's all that's going to happen. It doesn't matter what you actually say. It doesn't matter what you actually do. It doesn't matter whether you've gone out of your way to try and be intellectually honest about your own perspective or whether you've criticized people on your supposed own side. None of that matters to the left, because for the left, they must paint a picture of right-wingers as a bunch of red meat-eating zombies who simply want to consume information that they like. You know, they don't worry about that on their own side, but they worry about that on the right. Never mind the fact that most conservatives read things on the left. Most conservatives, are in a culture that is dominated by the left. Despite Jane Coaston's evidenceless propositions to the contrary, the fact is that the mainstream American media culture is dominated by the left. It's not dominated by people like me. Okay, Daily Wire has become a very big site, thank God. But it is not a big site in comparison to places like Huffington Post. And the fact is, the left still dominates the media conversation. And for Jane Coaston to deny that and for her to suggest that those of us on the right are merely in the pandering business is to demonstrate her own ignorance. You want to know who is in the pandering business? Somebody who is hailed by the left as a moral hero is Jimmy Kimmel. So Jimmy Kimmel was hailed for the past 3, 4, 5 weeks, ever really since the Obamacare attempts by the senator from what's the name of the senator who was on his show? In any case, I can't remember the name of the senator for Bill Cassidy. In any case, the Jimmy Kimmel did a whole rant about Bill Cassidy and Obamacare, how terrible it would be if Obamacare were repealed. It was evidenceless. It was fact-free. I did an entire rebuttal of it here on the show that went viral. And Jimmy Kimmel has been hailed as a moral leader because he spoke out on gun control and because he spoke out on health care. And he accepted this mantle. He obviously thinks that he has a voice in this. He's not just a comedian. He has a voice in this. And as a citizen, he feels the necessity to use his platform. Now, he has every right to do that, right? He has every right to do this whole thing. What I said was, when Jimmy Kimmel did this routine, that he was the moral arbiter for the country. And he posed himself as that, right? He said things like, "You're immoral if you disagree with me." This was the implication of his Las Vegas rant, that if you disagreed with him, you were immoral. You want people to die because you're being paid off by the gun lobby. We went through it in detail here on the show. You pose yourself as the moral voice of the country. I said, who died and made Jimmy Kimmel the moral arbiter? Well, because that went viral, Jimmy Kimmel, without responding to me by name, responded to me directly on one of the Sunday shows. Here was Jimmy Kimmel responding, and I want you to note, who do you think is pandering here? Who do you think is pandering? Am I pandering for standing up for a perspective that I have held my entire political career, have spoken out for openly and honestly for 15, 16, 17 years, or I'm 33, so I've been doing this since I was 17, so 16 years. Right? Is it me? Am I the one pandering when I say things that I think are true to the right and to the left? Or is it Jimmy Kimmel? Because I'm going to show you a clip of Jimmy Kimmel in which he openly acknowledges that he is basically pandering and he doesn't really care. Here's Jimmy Kimmel.
You've heard there's one conservative commentator in particular who says, who made Jimmy Kimmel the moral arbiter?
I'm not.
I mean,
I agree with them. I'm nobody's moral arbiter. I mean, you don't have to watch the show. You don't have to listen to what I say. Like 3 years ago, I was equally liked by Republicans and Democrats, and then Republican numbers went way down, like 30% or whatever. And, as a talk show host, that's not ideal, but I would do it again in a heartbeat.
So you don't mind if Republicans turn off your show? They're not watching anymore?
I don't say I don't mind. I mean, I love for everyone. I want everyone with a television to watch the show. But if they're so turned off by my opinion on health care and gun violence, then I don't know. I probably won't want to have a conversation with them anyway.
Okay, so it's that last part that's the telling part. So number one, when he says he didn't appoint himself a moral arbiter, I'm glad. I wish the media would stop appointing a moral arbiter then. And I wish that he would stop talking in these passionate moral tones about everyone who disagrees with him being the Antichrist. Like, that would be nice if he would cut that out then. If he's not the moral arbiter, then he should stop posing as one. And that final comment is the one where I say he's pandering. That final one where he says, if people disagree with me so much on these topics that they just turn off the TV, then I wouldn't want to have a conversation with them anyway. Well, if somebody said that to me, right? If somebody said, there are a bunch of people who are turned off by your rhetoric, what do you say about that? I would say some of the same things that Jimmy Kimmel said, right? I would say, listen, they have a right to watch the show. They have a right not to watch the show. But I would say is maybe they should listen to my perspective and I'll listen to theirs and we can have a discussion. I say this in every speech. In every speech, I say this. Okay, I always say that I want the conversation to take place. I want more people on the left to listen and I want to hear their ideas too so we can go back and forth on this. Okay, it's Jimmy Kimmel saying basically, if you don't want to watch the show, so long, see ya. Right? That is not the voice of somebody who wants to convince. That's the voice of somebody who wants to pander. So if Jane Coaston wants to write a piece talking about quote-unquote hollow moral bravery, then maybe she ought to start with the person who, I'm not saying Jimmy Kimmel appointed himself moral arbiter, except that he sort of did on his show. I'm saying the media appointed him moral arbiter, and he seemed happy to accept that and happy to revel in it until the point where I called him out, at which point he immediately backtracked. So I'm glad he's backtracking. I'm glad Jimmy Kimmel doesn't think of himself as a moral arbiter. If Jimmy Kimmel really wants to debate these issues and have an honest conversation about them, I'm more than happy to come on his show, and I'm more than happy to have him on mine. I don't think that's going to happen. Okay, so I want to talk about Harvey Weinstein because this has been the brewing scandal for a long time here. But before I get to that, I first want to say thank you to our sponsors over at My Patriot Supply. So right now, look at this fire in Northern California. We've seen so many natural disasters, really awful, in the past few weeks. We've seen this natural disaster in Northern California. We've seen hurricanes in Puerto Rico. We've seen a hurricane in Texas. We saw a hurricane in Florida. We've seen a huge fire actually pretty close to us out here off the 210. These natural disasters mean that there are going to be times, hopefully not, but there may be times in your life when you have to rely on whatever food is in your house. And maybe you didn't go to the grocery store that week, or maybe your fridge is down because there was a power outage. Well, that's why you need some food that is going to take you through those hard times from our friends over at My Patriot Supply. This week, you can get their 72-hour emergency food kit for just $17.76. $17.76 for their 72-hour emergency food kit. That includes free shipping. Order now at 888-803-1413, 888-803-1413, or online at preparewithben.com. Again, that's preparewithben.com, and get 72 hours emergency food kit, so you're prepared for any emergency, because most emergencies will be over in 3 days. $17.76. With that special low price, there's a limit of 4 per order. My Patriot Supply believes in old-fashioned values, plus apparently their food tastes really good. I've been told by that by people around the office. We did a taste test and everything. Join me in their mission to build a more prepared country. Make that call today, 888-803-1413. That's 888-803-1413, or go to preparewithben.com. Again, that's preparewithben.com. Okay, let's talk about Harvey Weinstein. So I've lived my entire life in Hollywood. I grew up in Hollywood. My mom works in Hollywood. I have met Harvey Weinstein. I met him one time. I was at the Four Seasons having breakfast with a friend of mine named David Suissa, who's the editor over at the LA Jewish Journal. And David introduced me to Harvey Weinstein. Weinstein was a jerk, but he did not sexually harass me, which apparently makes me the only person in the 300-mile radius he did not sexually harass. For what that is worth. In any case, Weinstein now, obviously, they're saying there are hundreds of cases in which he sexually assaulted, harassed, or raped people. So that is shocking but not surprising. The reason I say it's shocking but not surprising is that this has long been a part of Hollywood culture. To pretend otherwise is just foolish. And unlike in, for example, the Catholic Church, which is against these things, this has always been a long, if not celebrated, then winked at, nodded at, grinned at, laughed at part of Hollywood culture. It has been. The casting couch has been part of Hollywood culture since the very beginning. And to pretend otherwise is just to let Hollywood off the hook for a certain perspective on human sexuality that is seriously perverse and leads to really dire consequences. The reason the left wants to ignore this, of course, is because the Hollywood view of human sexuality that allowed for this sort of misbehavior and evil to accrue and occur for literally decades on end is something that the left sort of holds in high regard, and that is the transactional nature of sex. So let's talk a little bit about the casting couch for just a second. So first of all, here's a little bit of Hollywood history. It was built on sexual peccadillos, and in particular on the casting couch. Here is a long list of people who are involved in using the so-called casting couch. For those who don't know the phrase, casting couch means that there's a director, he has to cast a part in his film, and so he'll go to a hot starlet or upcoming starlet who has ambitions and say to her, you want a shot at this role, you want a screen test, darling, get down on that couch, right? That's what the casting couch meant. Okay, here are some of the people who engaged in it. Louis B. Mayer, right, the founder of MGM. Apparently, he sexually assaulted teenage Judy Garland. There are stories about him with Judy Garland on his lap when she was 16 years old and him fondling her breasts. Okay, so this goes back a long time. Arthur Freed, legendary producer, allegedly exposed himself to Shirley Temple when she was 11 years old. She wrote that in her memoir. Harry Cohn, a guy so hated in Hollywood that there was an old joke that used to go around about Harry Cohn that his funeral would be the most well-attended event in the history of Hollywood because everyone wanted to make sure he was dead. But Harry Cohn had a long history of sexual abuse, apparently. Daryl Zanuck reportedly solicited prospective starlets on a routine basis. Howard Hughes not only slept with starlets consensually, but apparently had a casting couch himself. And this was a running joke in Hollywood for years. Okay, it's part of the movies. All About Eve won Best Picture in 1950. It's a terrific film. I've recommended it here on the actual show. This joke involves Marilyn Monroe. So you're going to see here a very, very young Marilyn Monroe. This is one of Marilyn Monroe's first screen roles in which she had a speaking role anyway. And she plays an up-and-coming woman who's attempting to break into the theater. She has this bit part. George Sanders is playing a theater critic named Addison DeWitt, and he's been squiring Monroe's character around. Basically, she's sleeping with him so that he will squire her around town, and then he passes her off to the producers, right? The way that he's going to pass her off to the producers is have her essentially used as a sexual object by the producers in order to solicit the part. There's an open part of the film, right? I mean, this is part of the joke. Here it is from the film.
Then you two must have a long talk.
I'm afraid Mr. DeWitt would find me boring before too long.
You won't bore him, honey. You won't even get a chance to talk.
Claudia, come here. You see that man? That's Max Fabian, the producer. Now go and do yourself some good.
Why do they always look like unhappy rabbits?
Because that's what they are. Now go and make him happy.
All I want is a drink.
Leave it to me. I'll get you one.
Thank you,
That's
Mr. Fabian.
Well done. I can see your career rising in the east like the sun.
Okay, and then she ends up getting an audition but not getting the part, and then she asks Addison DeWitt for his advice. He says, go try the same thing in Hollywood. Okay, this is in the New York theater circles. This has always been a part of Hollywood. It's always been a disgusting, horrible part of Hollywood. To pretend otherwise is to ignore reality. Okay, Harvey Weinstein is the worst example of what happens in Hollywood, but it is ridiculous to suggest he's the only example of this happening in Hollywood. Okay, there are a number of starlets who have talked about this over time. I'm talking about virtually all of the major ones have talked about. Joan Collins talked about. Marilyn Monroe described the town as being, she said that, this is from her autobiography, she said producers treated Hollywood, quote, like an overcrowded brothel. Okay, a movie that many more people have seen than All About Eve, although All About Eve is a great movie. The Godfather, this is part of the plot. Don't you remember in The Godfather? Right, Jack Woltz, you remember the guy who ends up with the horse head in his bed? Do you remember the conversation that leads to the horse head in his bed in The Godfather? It's Jack Woltz, this famous Hollywood producer, who's sitting with Tom Hagen, and he says to him, and this is direct quote, Johnny Fontaine never gets that part, right? Johnny Fontaine ruined one of Waltz International's most valuable proteges. I was going to make her a big star. And let me be even more frank, just to show you that I'm not a hard-hearted man. That's not all dollars and cents. She was beautiful. She was young. She was innocent. She was the greatest piece of ass I've ever had. Right? That's in The Godfather. Everyone knew in Hollywood about this for decades. It's still going on in Hollywood right now. It's still going on in Hollywood right now.